Hi, everybody. Oh, come on. You've had a coffee and a bacon sandwich. Hello, everybody. Listen, it's going to be a lot like Panto from here on in, so you better start playing. So hi, my name's Dave. I work for a company you may have heard of called Microsoft. Please understand, like Steve Clayton, I have a comedy job title because I am, check me out, Microsoft UK's Chief Envisioning Officer. Yeah, right? Come on, we come from a world of IT. Job titles are all we've got, right? This is as good as it gets. Thing is, I invented that job title because, as you well know, I work for a brand, just like any other tech company, loves to talk to you about the technology. We love talking about the technology and the products that we make. But what we don't do enough of, for my money, is talk about not the technology, but the human beings that use it. And my job is essentially to project out into the future, to try and understand how a human being is going to want to live, work, and play. Because I think if we know what the humans are going to do, we can be a lot more mindful about the kind of technology they're going to require. So then understand at a certain level, my job is essentially about the future of humanity. Right? And I just figured if I'm going to have a job about the future of humanity, I demand a job title with a certain degree of pomposity. I think you'll see I've achieved that. I also love this job title because when I was a kid, I said to my mum, I said, Mum, one day I am going to be CEO at Microsoft. You just watch me. Thankfully, she's not on Twitter. She won't be watching the live stream, so as long as you don't tell her, she'll never know. I stand in front of you, an individual. I've dedicated my entire career to the world of IT, right? 25 years inside the second smallest rooms in your organization. These are the rooms with no natural daylight, just the whirring and the fans and just the blinking of the LEDs. I have chosen to work for one of the world's largest technology companies. I have gone to the extremes of personal grooming to grow a beard and a ponytail. That's how committed I am. And guess what? I also quite like Star Trek, man. Right? This is my 8th birthday party. It's my mum and my... Stick with me. I'll make it relevant, right? The thing is, when I was a kid, technology taught me this incredible lesson. Star Trek taught me this incredible lesson that technology is supposed to be a force for good in our lives. It's this thing that enables human beings to rise up and achieve more than they could do on their own. This is the point of technology. This is the purpose of technology. This is why I chose a career in IT. It's why I choose to work for Microsoft. But my problem is those 25 years in bloody IT. Right? Because I look around at how we all use technology today. I do not see this liberating force. I see a prison. I see something that constrains how we work, controls how we think. And quite frankly, I refuse to accept that as our future. So a few years ago, I set out on a different path. I wrote a book called Business Reimagine, which is basically about how the way we work today doesn't work. And it starts in this place, the world that you guys well know, but actually we don't spend enough time to really appreciate, to really cherish. A world where technology is at the very core of what we do as humans. Humour me. Put your hand up if you have a computer at home. Yeah, what a surprise. Keep your hand up if the computer you have at home is better than the one you use at work. Yeah, right. Even in a digital audience, right? That example, everybody keeps their hands up. I love that question. I ask that question to every audience I speak to. I love it, especially if it's a public sector audience. It's like shooting fish in a barrel at that point. But the reality is it doesn't matter what industry you're in, what size of organization you're in. Most people have a richer experience of technology in their personal lives than they're allowed to in their professional lives. We have grandparents Skyping their grandkids. You guys live online, you shop online, you play online. You have this amazing experience of technology in your personal lives. And then you've got to work. And this is how most people feel about technology at work, right? They're greeted at the door by some long-haired, beardy git like me in IT who just loves to say, nah, you can't do that. I don't understand that, right? I've spent the majority of my career chasing people down corridors like some bizarre, freakish stalker, trying to get people to care about what technology might do for them in their jobs. These days, that chase still happens. Thanks to consumerization, it's people who are chasing me down the corridor. How come I got home to this great stuff, this great personal experience of technology? I can't do any of this at work. We have to celebrate this as an opportunity. This, for the first time ever, the people we care about, our customers, the people we work with, our friends and families, are engaged with technology and they want more. This is a wonderful time to be alive because we can start living up to that potential. But before we can get there, we've got to get past some pretty big problems. And the first big problem we have to get past is the concept of productivity. Productivity is the thing that is limiting the success of your organization today. Productivity is the thing that's holding you back. Now, let me qualify. I don't mean productivity per se. I mean our definition of productivity. Because the problem with our definition of productivity is we still think productivity is how it was defined 200 years ago in the crucible of the Industrial Revolution, where productivity became about this cold economic formula, output per unit of input. For 200 years, we have fixated founded on productivity being not about the things we make or what we do with our time, but how efficient the process is. 200 years later, all we think about is the efficiency of what we do. How do we make the process quicker? And in our fixation about efficiency, we've forgot to ask whether we're being effective. Is the thing we're actually doing as a result of this useful? Is it good for our customers? Does the experience good? For example, let's pick on the NHS. It's a really easy target. I can be the most efficient nurse on the ward. I can deliver and administer more injections than any other nurse. I would argue my quality of patient care may not be quite how it should be. This is the problem of a world of efficiency over effectiveness. And until we break this, we will never get technology to its rightful place, because most of our organizations, not just the NHS, every one of us are stuck with processes that go back to our Victorian forebears. They were invented in the 19th century. The way that we think about work, the way that we structure work, the whole concept of work itself is a Victorian concept. And all we have done for the last 4 decades with technology is we have taken those old Victorian working practices and we have made them a bit quicker or a bit cheaper. We never once said, do you know what? The opportunity of technology is to do these things differently, or maybe not even to not do them at all. We just continue blindly on, and we live in this world where the technology actually holds us back because of the way we use it. So I followed up that first book with another book called The Rise of the Humans. And this is about our personal relationship with technology. It's a story really that Joanne talked about very much early this morning. There are 2 things I need to tell you about the books. Number 1, you have to understand I'm a cheap date, so if you're interested in any of these stories, you can get the books for free on Amazon if you have a Kindle. If you don't have a Kindle, tweet me and I'll send you a download code. The second thing, and I'm kind of embarrassed to have to say this in public, I was a time in my life where I was kind of stuck for cash. I did what many people do when they stuck for cash. They need to pay the bills, and for a while, I'm not very proud of this, but I was, I'm afraid to tell you, a management consultant. One of the things I learned as a management consultant is you never give the answers away. You will find no answers in these books, because I was a bloody good consultant. But what you will find is a bunch of provocations. And The Rise of the Humans is really about the world that we live in today, a world of too much information. We run around and we complain about having too much information like it's a new thing. I would argue that since the invention of the printing press, our society has had access to more content than any single human being could consume in their lifetime. The fact that today we have the internet, mobile technology makes it 10 times more, a bazillion times, it doesn't matter, right? We still have more. But what really makes the problem acute, what really makes the problem special, is these bloody things. These beautiful, gorgeous, wonderful personal devices that are with us from the moment we wake up until the moment we go to sleep. Now, be honest, who amongst you, first thing this morning when you woke up, you check your phone? Last thing at night. This is exactly the problem. Because these devices, as great as they are, they mean we are surrounded by a world of too much information wherever we are, whatever we're doing, every moment of our waking day. And for all of the greatness that this technology has brought us, all of the amazing things that we can now do, most people still live here. Quick random sample of this audience. Who amongst you does not get enough email? Right? I don't even have to create a punchline to the joke. We get this, by the way, ladies, this was not what we were supposed to do with technology. Now I want to talk to you about what we should do with technology, about where we go. Because the simple truth is that we will never get to a place where we can work smarter, where we are constrained by the process of how we work, the way we use the tools of work, the mentality, the approach. These are the things that hold us back. And unless we fix them, working smarter is off the table. The only choice we will all have is simply to work harder, send more email. And again, please, that cannot be our future. So the great news is this is all happening just because we've forgotten what technology enables us to do, just because we've forgotten what fuels technology, what the things that it really brings to our lives and what we can do. And the thing I really want to focus on, the thing I want to fixate on, and it's a boring topic, but it's the world of data. Because we are entering into an era where we are going to have access to more data than ever before. It's already happening around us. I'm not going to talk about big data. I'm going to talk about a world where we have access to pretty much everything that we need to know. And in that world, some really wonderful things start to happen. The first thing that happens is when you have lots of data, more data than you could ever think about, the answers to the questions that you've been asking yourselves for years, as an individual, as an organization, they start to fundamentally change. Here's my favorite example of this. Here are 2 vehicles. We've got a Toyota Prius and a Land Rover Defender. Which of these 2 vehicles would you say is more environmentally friendly, better to the planet? Put your hand up if you think it's the Toyota Prius. Put your hand up if you think it's a trick question and it's a Land Rover Defender. Yeah? Put your hand up if you want to be a management consultant and you know the answer is, well, it depends, right? Right? Because it does depend, right? It depends on how broad a view, how much data you use to make the answer. If you take a narrow view of data, and this is what we do today, this is what we do with our organizations, the way we live our lives, we take the data that we've got, let's look at fuel consumption. Well, of course, when you look at fuel consumption, the best of these two vehicles for the planet is that Toyota Prius. That thing runs on water and pixie dust, hugs trees when you drive by. Not like the bloody different drinks diesel. It's terrible. Well, back in 2008, the Americans, they took a systemic view of this question, and they created a report that basically took the data from the creation of the components that go to make the vehicles through to the point at which the vehicle is thrown on the scrap heap. The best of these two vehicles for the planet is actually the Land Rover Defender. Now, why? Well, over 67% of every Land Rover ever made over the last 60-odd years is still on the road. You cannot break these vehicles. Trust me, I have tried several times. And if you do break them, you can fix them at the roadside with bubblegum and baling twine. Now, the point of this example is not to make an advert for Land Rover, although if any of you have got connections and they're looking for sponsorship opportunities, obviously I'm available. This is simply an example to show you, look what happens to the answer of this question when you add more data into the mix. The answer fundamentally shifts. The same is true of every single question you're asking of yourselves as an individual or yourselves as an organization. Your job now is to seek out as much data as you can find. You should be smothering yourselves in data at every available opportunity. And when you do that, you have to be careful. You have to be careful about how you link the data together because there is danger ahead. This next example is one of the reasons why I truly love the internet, because a proper grown-up academic was so worried about the problems of spurious data correlation, he dedicated some significant research time to answering this question. He wanted to show you how dangerous a world of spuriously correlating two big data sets together was. And so what he did is he took two very important data sets. He took the change in the average surface temperature of the Earth, and he correlated that to the number of pirates operating in the Indian Ocean. And what you'll see, ladies and gentlemen, is over time, as the number of pirates operating in the Indian Ocean dwindles, the average temperature of the Earth increases. Yeah. So on the basis of this evidence, ladies and gentlemen, what I would put it to you, if we truly want to save, if we really care about our planet, it's not more renewable energy we need, it's not wind farms, it's not solar, it's simply more pirates. Right? This is a danger of a world where you go out and you grab too much data and you start randomly connected. Data has to be related to itself. It has to have some connection. And if it doesn't, you end up in this dangerous place. But the real gift of data is yet to come. And this is a world where we use data to accurately predict what will happen, not to reflect on what has happened. And we are already entering into this world. Now, trust me, this is not some half-baked down the pub on a Saturday afternoon who's going to win the 320 at Chepstow prediction. This is statistically significant prediction. Microsoft has been doing this for the last couple of years. We did the last Football World Cup. We got 15 out of 16 World Cup games right. We did the Scottish referendum. We got that right within 2% of the public vote. We are a consumer company. We have done X Factor. We have done Pop Idol. We have even, highlight of my own personal career, done the Eurovision Song Contest. Oh, yes. And we're getting it right. Now, better still, we're making the algorithms that make that kind of prediction possible available to everybody. It's just an API you call from the cloud. You point it at your data. The question you need to start thinking about for this part is how would you run your life, your organization, the thing that you're working on in a world where you can accurately predict what will happen rather than reflect on what has. You have to start to be able to answer that question because that world is just around the corner. Now, what's making this possible is probably the most important technology that anybody on the planet is working on today. Not just Microsoft, Facebook, Google, we're all at it. And it's a technology called machine learning. Some people call it artificial intelligence. This is a world of statistical-based pattern recognition. It's how algorithms are made. I would bet you will all remember the first time you became aware of this technology because I would bet it was the first time that you used a search engine and as you were typing in the query, the search engine completed the query for you before you'd finished typing. And if you were like me, you were like, well, that was a bit weird. I'm looking over my shoulder, seeing who's watching. Statistical-based pattern recognition. All that's happening is the search engine says, based on the characters you've just entered, and against the billions of other queries that have been entered in me today, the statistical probability of you going on to complete the sentence like this is 99%, so I'm going to suggest that as the first option. That simple ability to spot patterns in lots and lots of data enables us to build the most incredible services. Things that will not just change how we relate to technology, they will not just change about how we humans relate to each other. I would argue in the fullness of time, they will change how we think about what it means to be human. Here's a great example of this. This is available today as a public beta. This is using the power of machine learning to provide real-time speech-to-speech language translation. We do it via Skype. It's powered by Bing. And we showed it a couple of years ago. We had a gentleman speaking German connected to a lady who speaks English. Gentleman speaks German, lady hears English. Lady speaks English, gentleman hears German. Real-time, no human being involved, just some algorithms doing some pretty smart stuff, spotting patterns in lots and lots of data. I need you to think about the transformational capability about this kind of stuff because it changes our world. I have a 10-year-old son. On the basis of this technology, do I bother to get my son to learn a foreign language at school? Because the reality is by the time he enters his world of work, it will be a redundant skill. Now, I get that's provocative. I get there are lots of reasons why we learn foreign languages at school, and yeah, of course, my son, he'll learn 1 or 2 languages at school. But as a result of this technology, when he emerges from his education, not only will he be able to speak those 1 or 2 languages, he will be able to speak another 152 languages fluently. He will be able to travel the world, communicate with the locals as if he were a local, which will fundamentally change his cultural experience as a human being. This stuff changes our lives. It changes our world. We have to get ready for what it means to us. If you want to know how this kind of stuff works, really good example, again, from some good, proper, grown-up academic research, this time from Cambridge University. And basically, the principle of how algorithms work is this. Right, we know that if you speak English, as long as I keep the first and last characters of a word in the right place, I can mix up all the other characters. I can even misspell words, and you will still be able to read the text. Is that true? Can you read the text? Right? This is how algorithms work. They work based on patterns. There are 2 reasons why I love this example. The first reason is it's completely contradictory to the way that we're taught language at school. Because when we're at school, we're taught that language is logical. We're taught that language follows rules. We're taught things like I before E except after C. But what they don't teach us is that there are 923 exceptions to the I before E rule. There are more exceptions to the I before E rule than there are to the bloody rule itself. Language isn't logical. It doesn't follow rules. It follows patterns. And we innately know this as human beings because from the day we learn to read until the day we die, we create, curate, and tend to our own personal pattern of language. Every time you read something, you're making your own personal pattern of language better. And when your brain gets presented with something as ambiguous as this, it doesn't call on the rules, it doesn't call on the logic, it calls on your patterns. The second reason why I love this example is it shows you the limitation of algorithms, because they're only as good as the patterns that they're provided with. What do you think happens when I show this to somebody who's just beginning to learn to speak English, or I've shown it to my son, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago when he's just forming his own language skills? Can't read it. It makes no sense to them because they haven't established enough of their pattern. And it's a bit like this week. We've seen this amazing achievement with DeepMind being able to beat a human being at Go. And that is an incredible achievement. But we need to remember that it's actually only being powered by the pattern of the game. For all of the prowess of DeepMind, for all of the amazing things that it can do, I could still beat it one-handed at a game of Snap or Tiddlywinks because it hasn't been provided with that pattern. So we have to remember, for the next decade at least, we humans aren't going anywhere because somebody has to write the patterns. Somebody has to contextualize the patterns. Somebody has to interpret the patterns. And that somebody is us human beings. So what can you do with this? Well, there are a number of things I need you to think about. The first thing is you have to all recognize that we all of us, have become enslaved to technology. Whether it's what Joanne was talking about earlier, about how the fact that we gravitate around our screens rather than the human beings around us. Or it's the fact that we work in ways that are stupid and pointless in a world where we have access to great technology tools. We have to recognize that those working practices are holding us back. We have to start thinking about how we reinvent productivity. Productivity as a concept has been around for thousands and thousands of years. Up until probably around the Middle Ages, our sense about productivity was the things that I made. It was about the effectiveness of what I do. I would argue in a digital economy, in a digital society, we should get back to that definition. We should start thinking about what is it that I need to do that will make me be effective? What is it that this company needs to do that will make... What are the products that our customers will love? If I really understand those, then I can set about building them. You all have to know that if you want to deliver this kind of transformation to the people you care about, be it your employees or your customers or your friends and family, you can only do that if you have access to two things. The first thing is you all have to have a culture that supports transformation. Everybody in the organization, from the bottom to the top, needs to feel like they can make a difference. And then you have to understand that if you're lucky enough to have that kind of culture, you will only ever be successful if those people have access to the kind of tools that enable them to work in transformational ways. You will not be, I promise you, no matter how hard you try, you're never, ever going to be transformational over email, right? Not even as an attachment, right? It's just not going to happen. So you need a new generation of tools, and you need to start thinking about the outcomes, about what it takes for you to be efficient. One of the interesting things that happened to me this morning is I was walking in. I came in quite early. I'm walking down Shaftesbury Avenue. It's very early. There's not much traffic about. And in the middle of the road, there's a guy, right? He's got a high-vis jacket on. He's walking down the middle of the road. He's putting little dots of white powder down the middle of the road. And I'm curious by this point. I'm like, what are you doing? And I go to the bloke. I said, what are you doing? He says, it's all right. I'm just putting down elephant powder. Okay, that's interesting. What's the elephant powder for? Keeps the elephants away. And I'm like, but there aren't any elephants in London. And he just looks at me and goes, yeah, I know. It's good stuff, isn't it? Right? I'm here all week. The thing is, your organizations, our government, the way we live our lives, they're filled with elephant powder. Stuff that we think is crucial, but actually is pointless, redundant, meaningless in the way we live our lives today. Your job is to go into your organization, to go into thinking about how you live your lives, and whether it's about democracy or whatever, and find the elephant powder. Find it, look for it, get rid of it, just move on. The digital technology we use today, all technology, enables us to do things differently. It frees us from the constraints we've had of the past, but only if we human beings elect to make those changes. And that's the thing that we have to do. We've got to stop thinking about ourselves. We've got to start thinking about the people who consume our services, and this is really hard as human beings. And you see it all around you. I have a perfect example, or my favorite example of this, because I do the grocery shopping for my family. And those of you who still do grocery shopping, do you remember that stuff where you go to the big supermarket? Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe people don't do it anymore. But what you know is that when you check out at any major supermarket in this country, you get given these. You familiar with these? Yeah, what are these? These are remnants of an analog world. These are remnants of a world where we gravitated around the brands and they forgot to think about what loyalty truly means. How many of you have got a coffee shop loyalty card? How many of you carry more than one coffee shop loyalty card? Yeah, loyalty my arse, right? The only thing we're loyal to is cheap coffee, right? So the problem with these things is these are just indicative of an industry, of an organization that's thinking about itself. Because you think about what's the purpose of this, right? The purpose of this is to drive loyalty, to drive custom with me, with a brand. Well, if the brand really cared about me, it would start to think about me really differently. It would know, for example, that I'm a gentleman of a certain age. And rather than being told as I check out that, well done, Dave, you could have saved £2.83 if you'd shopped at Asda this week. So just for you, because it's you, because we know you're a loyal customer, we're going to give you a little voucher that basically says, if we see you again within 7 days, and you remember the piece of paper, we'll give you £2.83 because we value bollocks. If you valued my custom, you'd say, listen, Dave, I know you're a gentleman of a certain age. I know you're barely lucky if you can remember your own name in the morning. Never mind to bring a piece of paper with you the next time you happen to be in the grocery store. And as a result of that, if you could show us, I don't know, maybe some physical token that it's you. I don't know, maybe my credit card would do. And as I walk through the checkout, not only do you tell me that, by the way, you could have saved £2.83, but Dave, we're going to take it off your bill right now. This would be an organization, this would be an industry that's thinking about its customers rather than itself. I want you to do one thing when you receive these. I want you to see these for what they really are. These vouchers, these physical tokens we carry around with us, from any organization, from any retailer, these are simply love letters that the organization is sending itself, right? It gives you them in the hope that you will post them back. I love you. I really love you. I still love you. So don't do it. Don't play the game. Think differently about your customers. Don't become part of it. Think about what it means to be them. And in order to do that, you have to think differently about the world around us. And this is really hard for us as human beings. Because when we're human beings, we get locked into this thinking that we think the future is a straight line. It's a straight line extrapolated from where we are today, from where we were in the past, and the future is there. But the problem is our future, especially in a digital connected world, is never a straight line. It bounces around like a pinball. And actually, to give you an example of how we're not thinking in this way, the kind of problems that this thinking institutes, let me give you another great British example. Some of you will be familiar with these. These are the first autonomous vehicles that have been approved for use on UK highways. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is an example of an industry that's thinking in entirely the wrong way. Because when you start to look at the numbers, you realize our future is going to be quite different. Our future, basically, for this sort of thing, says that it's 2040 is the, sorry, by the time we get to 2040, we'll get 50% of all miles driven will be driven autonomously. That number doesn't reach 100% until we reach 2070. Do you seriously want to tell me that by the time we reach 2070, we will still think the best way for transporting human beings around the local environment is inside a robotic tin box? It cannot be the case. If Amazon is preparing to deliver a package to my house using a drone, am I not a bigger, albeit significantly heavier package? The future is very likely to be different. And the problem we have with this kind of thinking is also it carries on. It goes into regulation and legislation. Do you know what the first law the UK has passed for the provision of autonomous vehicles on UK highways? Is that there must be at all times a human being inside the vehicle. I don't know, let's just call them the driver, right? Whose job it is to monitor. This is the madness of that kind of thinking, but the real pain of this thinking, the real issue of this thinking is the opportunity cost of this thinking. Because for every moment an automotive engineer is thinking about the future of transportation being one of these things, nobody's thinking about how we build these. Or better still, this is what we really bloody want, is this thing. So your organizations are stuck with the same kind of thinking. You have to get outside of your organization. You have to get outside of your industry. You have to look for a very, very different future. And the final thing I want to tell you is about technology's role in that future. You have to get technology in the right place. And the best way I can find of explaining this is to go to a quote from Pablo Picasso, of all people, who was being interviewed in Paris in the mid-60s by some art magazine. They ask him this brilliant question. Why they ask him this? I don't know. Right? But they say, hey, Pablo, what do you think about computers? And even though computers in Pablo's Paris in the mid-60s are completely different to the computers we had today, his answer is genius, and it is true today as it was back then. And his answer was simply this: computers are useless. All they can give me is answers. What I really need is something that can ask the right questions. And ladies and gentlemen, that something is you. That's your job. That's what you have to do. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, your job is to figure out what is the bloody question that we need to answer. What would it take for us to be effective, not to be efficient? If you can come up with that answer, if you are crisp about the question that you need to ask, trust me, we all know that the technology will make short work of providing the answers. So put technology in the right place. Think about effectiveness over efficiency. Get the things all together in that way. Look for ways that technology can lift your capability and change what you do. And trust me, when you do that, then and only then can we as human beings rise up and live up to all of the potential that technology offers our modern digital society. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.